Hi, I'm Marian McPartland. My guest today is George Duke, a man of many talents. He's a pianist, composer, record producer, music director, and he has the ability to cross over from jazz to rock and back to jazz again. And today he's in his jazz pianist mode. At least I hope you are, George.
I am. Don't believe any of that, though.
I shouldn't believe it's true, though. You do so many things that just makes my head spin, and you've worked with so many people. It's unbelievable, and you're such a young guy. Goodness, I'm just terribly impressed.
Well, thank you very much.
And the new album on, CD for Warner Brothers. That's really exciting music. What's it called? Snapshot?
Yeah, it's called Snapshot.
Now, how did that come about? How did you decide to do those kind of pieces?
It was actually at the end of the record. I needed to call it something, so I sort of went back into my mind and decided to call it Snapshot, because it seems like an album is kind of like snapshots. You don't get the entire picture of a person. You kind of get little glimpses of someone's soul in the middle of a piece or something. So I figured that's what an album's like, little snapshots of somebody's.
And were all these pieces sort of like memories from different parts of your life or occasions?
Actually, that turned out to be true. It didn't start out like that, but it did kind of come out like that. I went back and got some of the older members of my old band back in the 70s, Sheila Escovedo, who's now Sheila E. now, and Dougal Chancellor, and people like that, and put the old band back together and did a couple of songs. I went back and got Dennis Chambers, who's a drummer I've been working with recently with Stanley Clarke. So I had a sort of an amalgam of musicians and also singers who I've worked with over the years.
Well, maybe later you'd play something from the record, but how about if we just kick things off with a little blues? I know you know how to play the blues.
I think so.
I know that.
Great.
We could do, Now's the Time. It's
Sure.
a well-known old blues tune.
I love it.
Okay.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Oh, I love it.
You're great.
Thank you. I love it. That's just the tip of the iceberg. You know, we should just have played 95 choruses. It started to feel so good, and then I'm always worrying about the time, you know,
Yeah.
and have to stop. Well, I was reading all your stuff, and I understand that you started very young, and that did your mother play? Or?
Yeah, my mother played a little bit. She kind of encouraged me just in the music field in general. She used to take me to concerts. For example, she used to take me when I was around 4 or 5 years old to see Duke Ellington. She took me to see Lionel Hampton. And I don't remember much of it, but I know that she told me I used to jump around the aisles and I used to follow Lionel Hampton around.
Oh, my God, when he was doing Flying Home.
Yeah, and he'd come out in the audience, you know, and I'd be following, and the audience would be laughing. I'd be walking down the aisles.
Yeah, you also were alleged to have said, after you heard Duke, you said, I want a piano, get me a piano.
It's true. I remember specifically, and I really wanted to do that. It was with this big orchestra with this guy playing the piano in this white suit, and it was, I really remember that. And I said, I want to do that. And I knew from that moment on, I was around 6 or 7 then, that that's what I want to do.
You certainly started out with the right influence, I must say.
Well, you know, it's funny. I made kind of a jump from Duke Ellington almost straight into Miles Davis, with Woody Herman mixed up in the middle there somewhere. Because my uncle had some Woody Herman records or 78s that I used to listen to and say, man, I don't know what this is, but I like it. And so by the time I had been playing for a while, I remember going into a store in San Rafael, California, and asking the guy at the desk counter, I said, look, I want some jazz records. And I said, I don't know what to look for. And he says, well, why don't you try Miles Davis? And so I said, okay. I went back and I looked through and I saw an interesting cover, which was the kind of blue cover. And I bought it because I liked the cover. I had no idea who Miles was. And I went home, played this record, and it changed my life.
Boy, I think that record changed my life. I mean, that, excuse me, that was one of the great Miles Davis records, wasn't it?
Oh.
When that came out, that was like a revolutionary album.
I'd never heard anything like that. And I went out immediately and bought every record I could find, but everybody was in the group. You know, Bill Evans, Paul Chambers, whoever. I went and bought the records. And that was really life-changing.
God, but John Coltrane was in that group, wasn't he?
Yeah,
and they played
and Cannonball. Yeah.
That was one of the tunes.
Oh, yeah.
But anyway, earlier we were talking about the record that you just made, and I really would love to hear one of those tunes if you think you could wail a little bit of Geneva or one of the things on the record.
I'll give this one a shot. I'll play a couple of choruses.
Okay. It's such pretty harmony.
A little shorty.
Oh, but it's beautiful. It's beautiful. It's got. I just don't know how to describe that kind of music. It's not. It has a melody. It's not rock, and it has beautiful harmony.
Well, I sort of a Brazilian mode. It's kind of. I mean, you can't. It's hard to feel it without the drums in there. But
well, how do you like a tune like that? How do you, when you're going to compose? Do you sit down at the piano and say, I'm going to write a tune, or does it just come in your head?
Well, actually, I wrote that song as a ballad. I sort of sat down and just kind of, I kind of started off with a chord. Actually, I started off with the intro, and I said, I don't want to just play an E, chord of some sort. I thought I'd stretch it out a little bit, and I thought I'd try some fourth chords, in descending order until I found something I liked. And from there, I decided to come up with a melody that would just constantly recur. And I wanted a lot of chord changes. I didn't want to just sit with, 6, 2, 5, 1, the normal changes. I wanted something that would move, but give me a Brazilian flavor.
Play that little melody again.
Oh. And I wanted a way to get back. So I said, rather than just sit there and then go back, I decided to go into I was looking for something a little that was melodic and chords that would lead me in a little different direction. And so I repeated it. And then I decided to change to go a little different way. And I said, now we're in another key, so let's repeat the melody again. So it was a different change. That's kind of what it is.
That's nice. That sort of reminds me of what you were doing when you were. I watched your video where you're showing these kids how to compose. You had again F minor, sort of going to something like that, and then you told them how to build on that, and then you got some more notes in there, and then finally you got around to a chord, and then I found it fascinating, and I thought as long as they knew something about music in the first place, they would get a lot out of that.
Well, I love the way Joe plays and the way he constructs his songs, and for some reason, when I was at home composing Geneva, I was thinking about Joe Sample, and I said, now what would Joe do here? What would he play next? And I probably stretched it out a little bit from there, but that was kind of a starting point. And Joe's great. I love Joe. Well,
he evidently inspired you, because that's such a beautiful tune. It came off so exquisitely, and thinking of the town and the scenery, and it's such a romantic place and colorful place.
And speaking of that, I was telling you off the air that I actually got a chance to play the piano again over there in Geneva at the Montreux Jazz Festival, and did a 4-piano thing with Joe Sample, Herbie Hancock, Chicory, and myself, with 3 pianos, and one happened to be, we didn't know it at the time, one of the pianos happened to be a half-tone flat.
Oh,
so, and we were playing all blues, right?
Oh, wow.
And we thought Joe started out, and we thought he was playing a G flat. So when I went over to play with Chick Corea was looking at, he said, man, how come he's playing the tune in this key? And I said, I don't know. So everybody, Herbie and Chick and myself, were looking at Joe like he was out of his mind. He was sort of testing us, And it was a funny story, and we didn't know until afterwards that we got off stage that he actually played it in G. It was just the piano we were on was flat.
So you all played in G flat?
We had to play it in G flat. At least whoever was on that piano.
Well, see, it just shows what fantastic musicians you are, because not everybody can play in that key.
Well, we didn't play it like we do in G, I tell you.
I thought I'd like to ask you about how you got into the group with Jean-Luc Ponty. That must have been a whole new thing for you.
Oh yeah, it's actually the first time that I ever let I don't want to say ego, but I got very aggressive, because I knew this was a chance. And don't ask me how I knew it, but I really felt that this was an opportunity, and I really loved the way the guy had played. There's a station in Berkeley called K-Jazz that played, all of the music up there, and I was aware of Jean-Luc's music, so I started sending tapes. I called every day, and I told his producer, Dick Bach, at the time that I was the guy. And he finally, he heard it and said, let's give the kid a shot. And so just by playing with Jean-Luc, and he was a very unique instrumentalist at the time.
Oh, yeah.
Through him, I met Frank Zappa, and I met Cannonball Adderley, I met Quincy Jones, and that's how my career really began to take off.
Well, now that's a story in itself. After you were with Jean-Luc Ponty, then you went with Frank Zappa.
Yeah.
I mean, I want to hear about that.
Well, I met Frank on the King Kong record, which was a record that Jean-Luc's record that Frank produced. And he liked the way I played, and he asked me to join the Mothers of Invention. And actually, I did a date with him here in town first with the L.A. Philharmonic or some orchestra. And he really liked the way I played because I was a very serious musician, and I wasn't afraid to take chances and just play crazy with elbows, feet, whatever. And when I was a very serious young jazz musician. And I guess he liked the dichotomy of that because he had a lot of straight ahead rock and roll kind of tunes along with some sort of contemporary classical music like Edgar Varese.
My goodness.
So the hardest thing for me to do with Frank was just to play that simple rock and roll. You know, he used to
what
ask
did you
me,
have to play? What kind of a thing did you have to play behind him?
The worst was to have to do, you know, Frank used to say, I need you to play that. And I said, Frank, I can't play that. And he'd look at me and say, is something wrong with your hand? I said, no, nothing's wrong with my hand. I just can't play that. You know, it was beneath me to play that. And he kind of loosened me up. And eventually I began to play it, but I hated it. I have to admit.
Well, I mean, it's pretty hard for somebody with all your ability to be playing something so trite.
Yeah. But, you know, he made me see the humor in it. It was really funny to him. And from that, something like this, I mean, we would go into songs like that's a song called Echidna's Arf, which Frank wrote. So we go from playing, you know, into Echidna's Arf. So it was a challenge.
So you were there 5 years.
5 years, yeah.
Goodness me.
A lot of crazy fun, I tell you. And jazz critics didn't like it too much. They hit me kind of hard. But I learned a lot from working with Frank, really, a tremendous amount.
And were you writing all that time, your own stuff?
Yeah, I was looking forward to doing my own records. And, of course, I left Frank in 1971 to join Cannonball Adderley, which was, like, for me, the greatest thrill of my life. And because I love Cannonball Adderley.
Yeah, boy, he certainly was great.
Yeah, it was
Fantastic
really a thrill.
Musician.
Right. But all the time, yeah, I was with Frank. Basically, I was writing and looking forward to do some other things.
God, you know, I would love to hear you play, like maybe a standard tune, hear what you would do with something like Stella by Starlight.
Oh.
Just to really go from Zappa to Starlight.
Zappa to Starlight?
Yeah.
Maybe I can do that. Let's see. Anyway.
That's really nice, going through all the different key changes. Starting out in B flat and ending in B is nice.
I had no idea where it was going.
I know, but that's what makes that's what's fun, that you really have no idea, but it comes out so terrific.
You never know.
I mean, that's what I love about playing this kind of music. You can go in any direction.
Yeah.
And something I was thinking about while you were playing, after you bought all your collection of Miles Davis records, you worked with Miles, didn't you?
Yeah, I actually.
How was that?
That was another thrill in my life. Well, he called me one day and asked me to write a song in his inimitable way. You know, I can't say on the air what he said, but it's something to
No,
him.
you certainly
Write
can't.
me a song. So I didn't really take it seriously. And I didn't do anything for a week. I thought about it, and he called me back a week later, and he says, "Where's my song?" I said,
That's a good imitation of Miles. Exactly like him.
Well, anyway, I eventually wrote this song as a demo and sent it to him as a thing we called Backyard Ritual, which was on his Tutu album. And I sent it to him, and I thought he was going to go in the studio and record it with his band, and he decided not to. He wanted to use it exactly the way it was because he said it sounded funny.
Oh, yeah.
And actually, the few things I did with Miles, he was never in the studio.
Really?
I did them. He called and said, "Write me something." I put it down on the computer the way I heard it, sent it to him, and then he would overdub it with Tommy LaPuma or someone, and that was the end of it. Matter of fact, I never played with him live until I went to the Montreux Jazz Festival one year, and I actually sat in with the band, which was great.
Miles really was great from the early days right up to the end, but of course I loved his earlier things more, like Seven Steps to Heaven and what he did on things like, I don't know, almost any tune, Funny Valentine, all the things.
Yeah.
I've got most of those at home myself.
Something special about those records with that band.
Yeah.
With Herbie Hancock and Tony Williams and those guys.
Oh, yeah.
Very special period in music, that I don't know if we'll see it again, not quite like that.
Not quite like that. And when I think of that record having John Coltrane on it and how he played at that time, and Bill Evans in the band, boy, those things are mind-boggling.
And that was the thing too. I grew up on Les McCann and Wynton Kelly and guys like that, and I sort of started playing more of the funky kind of gospel stuff because of Les. I really liked what he played.
Yeah.
And I liked Wynton because he seemed to, span the difference between, say, Bill Evans and Les McCann. Mm-hmm. But Bill Evans had another thing going on. It was like he was amazing to me. I used to study Bill Evans. I don't play like him, but he was an amazing pianist.
Yeah. I'm really having such a good time, I can hardly stand it. My guest today is George Duke. I'm Marian McPartland, and this is Piano Jazz. You know what? While we're talking, and you were talking about being with Frank Zappa, and he had you play with your elbows and do anything. We could do a free piece. We could play with our elbows and do a totally. Should we try some? I'm no Frank Zappa, but we could do something like sort of totally improvised.
Sure.
A free thing.
Love to.
Okay. couldn't reach it.
Let freedom ring, huh?
I can get very carried away with that. I mean, I could just do that for hours.
Yeah.
It's fun. Well, there's some nice little theme in there. I'm going through this list of credits, all these things you've done, George, and I know you've got a brand new project or something that you just did with a 50-piece orchestra.
Right.
That must have been terrific. When was that? Just a little while ago?
Yeah, it was at the Montreux Jazz Festival this year.
Oh, right.
In July.
Uh-huh.
And it was the premiere of the work on the 12th with the National Orchestra de Lille from Switzerland. And I had Stanley Clark on acoustic bass and myself on piano, Paulinho da Costa on percussion, and a guy named Chester Thompson on drums, who's currently working with Genesis for the last 15 years. But he plays great jazz.
Really?
Yeah.
I don't know him, but then I'm not always up on all the rock drummers. I know some of them, but not him. But he sounds like an all-around guy.
Yeah.
And of course, Stanley Clark is such a terrific musician.
Oh, Stanley played incredible. He really did. And it seems like we're both sort of moving in another area, not to forsake what we do for a living, but we want to sort of branch out and go back to what we started with, and that's the main thing. I wanted to be able to write an orchestral piece. The first time I ever played in front of an orchestra. And as a matter of fact, someone wrote a piece for Stanley, a bass concerto, which he recently performed in Philadelphia. So we're sort of going to try to combine this and do a tour next fall of some of the major orchestras and take these pieces around and do a little different thing.
Well, have you got any theme from the piece that you could play? Can you play a little bit of it?
Oh, my goodness.
One finger idea of what some of the themes are. I would love to hear.
Some of the thing is very much like it's very Stravinsky-ish in certain respects. Stravinsky was a hero of mine. I mean, I really love Stravinsky's music.
Yeah.
But there's one thing. It's most of it I couldn't play because it's really more orchestral than it is pianistic. But there was one thing I played, which I call "Love in the Woods." It's called Muirwoods, the Muirwoods Suite. And it goes on, and this melody recurs. I didn't finish it, but anyway, it goes on, and it recurs over and over again. It starts just with the acoustic piano and ends up with the full orchestra, just as loud as they possibly can play, and French horns and strings and this and that, and it comes back to the piano.
It's funny you mentioned the name of that Muirwoods.
Muirwoods Suite.
Muirwoods,
yeah.
Isn't that near San Francisco?
Yes.
Because I know that place, and I'm just thinking, how gorgeous that is. That you wrote.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's very. I can just hear how that would build with the strings and the.
Yeah.
And
I
that
think you'll
must
like
be
that
real
one.
Nice. Well, I'll have to get that when it comes out.
I'll send it to you.
Okay, that's a promise. Well, I'm getting in the mood to play one for you. I'd like to do. We talked about Duke Ellington, and maybe you could stand to hear a Duke Ellington tune.
Love to.
From me.
Great.
Okay, this one's in a sentimental mood.
It's a great song.
Thank you. You know,
great.
you're very inspiring. Just hearing you play, I get affected by what I hear around me, and then I start to maybe put in a different change from what I otherwise might do if you weren't here. You know, it's amazing. This is such a ball here this afternoon in the studio. My guest is George Duke. I'm Marian McPartland, and this is Piano Jazz. God, there's so many things that I haven't asked you about yet, George. And you also produced records or worked with Anita Baker, among other.
Yeah.
How was that?
It was an interesting experience. You know, she's a great singer, and most people think she's really a jazz singer, but she's really not. You know, and she doesn't really know a lot of the old standards and things. So she grew up loving them, but not learning them. And she started in a different era, and she just didn't learn them. But as a matter of fact, we are planning on doing a record together of standards. And I've written about 12 big band arrangements for her, and they're great. I mean, and she sounds great singing them. We performed them a couple times. And we're planning on doing one for a new album.
What tunes did she pick? What kind of tunes?
Oh, well, we have an interesting arrangement on My Funny Valentine that I did for her. All of you, excuse me. all of you. We've got, God, there's so many. You know, the things that she really loved, a couple of Billie Holiday things.
Well, that'll be interesting to hear her doing that kind of repertoire. And it's nice to hear those tunes played in or sung rather in a contemporary style. Well, how do you go about arranging stuff like that with the singer? Do you do it all and then say, here's what you sing, or do you?
Well, on, you know, certain songs that she chose, I tried to stay a little more straight. For example, on All of Me, I just took it and basically just kept it pretty true to what the song is, simple. I know at the same time I wanted to challenge her a little bit, so I might change the key, throw in a couple of substitute chords here and there, which would make her ears perk up. And I figure you need to do that with certain singers, or they you know, jaded. They get kind of do the same old thing all the time. With My Funny Valentine, I really stretched her out a lot.
Now, what kind of things did you do? For instance, like if I were playing the tune.
Well, yeah, I started, one of those kind of things.
Oh, yeah.
And, well, sorry about that one.
Oh, listen.
You know, but there's a lot of alternate changes we did. You know,
I would love to try to do something like that. Maybe on that, if not that tune, another one. Where could you?
Sure.
Could we do one?
Huh?
Just that kind of thing.
Sure.
Then I can steal all your chords.
You want to just continue with that one?
Yes. Well, let's start from the top.
Okay.
Let's see. Count it off.
Okay. See if I can remember it.
Oh, that's beautiful. If I was Anita Baker, I would be in seventh heaven.
Well, that doesn't tell the whole story, but it's kind of like a Gil Evans arrangement with the tight harmony and everything. I got oboes and flutes and all of that. It's a very nice arrangement, and she plans on putting it on her new album.
Well, you certainly have beautiful ideas. This whole afternoon, I'm just having such a good time listening to you. Different aspects of George Duke. Yeah. Maybe we could wind up with some more blues. That seems to be something one can always do at two pianos. However, before we do it, I must tell you, it's just been such a kick having you here.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
Finally, after all these years. So anyway, let's do a Duke tune. Or actually, it's not. It's a Billy Strayhorn blues. The Intimacy of the Blues.
Cool.
That should be good.
Great.
Okay. Mr. Chops, my goodness.
Chops,
Yeah, Chops.
no.
George, thanks. It's been a ball. I've had
My
a
pleasure.
good time.
Thank you very much.
You've been listening to Piano Jazz with host Marian McPartland and our guest, George Duke. This program originally aired in 1994. Piano Jazz is a production of South Carolina ETV Radio. The producer is Sherry Hutchinson, recording engineer David Glover, mastering engineer Bill Sexton, executive producer Tom Clark. We love to hear from you. Our email address is pj@scetv.org. Our postal address is 1041 George Rodgers Boulevard, Columbia, South Carolina, 29201. Support for Piano Jazz was provided by the National Endowment for the Arts, Art Works, by the Friends of Piano Jazz, NPR member stations, and NPR. Support was also provided by Save America's Treasures through a partnership between the National Endowment for the Arts and the National Park Service Department of the Interior. Support for the original production was provided by Exxon Corporation. Support for NPR comes from NPR contributors, which include the John D. and Catherine T. MacArthur Foundation, presenting the MacArthur Award for Creative and Effective Institutions. Winners are at macfound.org. And by the William T. Grant Foundation, supporting research to improve the lives of young people. Online at wtgrantfoundation.org.